process of Krishna consciousness. Primarily, the first verse, number 23. Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Achanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. Could we close that door, please? These are the 9 processes of devotional service. And I've been asked to say something about Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. I probably won't get that far because just Sravanam alone is such an important subject. I'll read the part from the purport about Sravanam and then we'll see where we go with that. Hearing of the holy name of the Lord, Sravanam, is the beginning of devotional service. Although any one of the 9 processes is sufficient, in chronological order, the hearing of the holy name of the Lord is the beginning. Indeed, it is essential. As enunciated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaito Darpana Marjanam. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one is cleansed of the material conception of life, which is due to the dirty modes of material nature. When the dirt is cleansed from the core of one's heart, one can realize the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. Thus, by hearing the holy name of the Lord, one comes to the platform of understanding the personal form of the Lord. After realizing the Lord's form, one can realize the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And when one can understand his transcendental qualities, one can understand the Lord's associates. In this way, a devotee advances further and further toward complete understanding of the Lord, as he awakens in realization of the Lord's holy name, transcendental form and qualities, his paraphernalia, and everything pertaining to him. Therefore, the chronological process is Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. This same process of chronological understanding holds true in chanting and remembering. When the chanting of the holy name, form, qualities, and paraphernalia is heard from the mouth of a pure devotee, his hearing and chanting are very pleasing. Srila Sanatana Goswami has forbidden us to hear the chanting of an artificial devotee or non-devotee. Just trying to work out which one I am. Hearing from the text of Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the most important process of hearing. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of transcendental chanting of the holy name, and therefore the chanting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam are transcendentally full of mellows. The transcendental holy name of the Lord can be heard and chanted according to the attraction of the devotee. One may chant the holy name of Lord Krishna, or one may chant the holy name of Lord Ram, or Nrsingadev, Ramadi Mortishu Kalani Yamena Tishtam. The Lord has innumerable forms and names, and devotees may meditate upon a particular form and chant the holy name according to his attraction. The best course is to hear of the holy name, form, and so on from a pure devotee of the same standard as oneself. In other words, one who is attached to Krishna should chant and hear from other pure devotees who are also attached to Lord Krishna. The same principle applies for devotees attracted to Lord Ram, Lord Nrsimha, and other forms of the Lord. Because Krishna is the ultimate form of the Lord, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, it is best to hear about Lord Krishna's name, form, and pastimes from a realized devotee who is particularly attracted by the form of Lord Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, great devotees like Sukadeva Goswami have specifically described Lord Krishna's holy name, form, and qualities. Unless one hears about the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord, one cannot clearly understand the other processes of devotional service. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends that one chant the holy name of Krishna. Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. If one is fortunate enough to hear from the mouth of realized souls, he is very easily successful on the path of devotional service. Therefore, hearing of the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord is essential. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 5th chapter, 11th verse, the following is stated. Tadvag vishago janataga viplavo yasmin pratislokyam abara vatyapi namanyanantasya yasonkitani yat shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhava. Verses describing the name, form, and qualities of Ananta Dev, the unlimited Supreme Lord, are able to vanquish all the sinful reactions of the entire world. Therefore, even if such verses are improperly composed, devotees hear them, describe them, and accept them as bona fide and authorized. In this connection, Sridhar Swami has remarked that a pure devotee takes advantage of another pure devotee by trying to hear from him about the holy name, form, and qualities of the Lord. If there is no such opportunity, he alone chants and hears the Lord's holy name. Umagyanati mirandasya gananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajiva Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Drubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhavevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Jatkripa Tamam Vande Shri Guru. Actually, the human form of life is meant for one purpose only. Within the cycle of birth and death, through 8,400,000 species of life, through countless creations, from the highest planetary system to the lowest planetary system. One very rarely comes into the human form of life, especially the human form of life on this planet. In one room conversation once in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada was explaining how actually this planet is the most significant planet in the entire universe, because this is the planet where Krishna manifests his Brajalila. In other words, so many incarnations of the Lord are appearing all over the universe. We actually have a few snapshots in Srimad Bhagavatam as it is presented to us. But actually Srimad Bhagavatam is unlimited because the Lord is unlimited. Prabhupada explains how the Lord's incarnations are more numerous than the waves of the ocean. Actually the Bhagavatam itself says that. Srila Prabhupada elaborates on that the forms of the Lord are ananta, unlimited. And each one of those forms has a story of pastimes. Or has unlimited stories of unlimited pastimes. Each incarnation of the Lord. So Srimad Bhagavatam is actually an unlimited book. It's an unlimited book. But as it is presented here on this planet, it is very specifically designed to bring one to a state in which one's dormant love for Krishna has been revived. Now, Srila Prabhupada is explaining how you can approach so many different incarnations of the Lord, so many different personalities of the Lord. The Lord has unlimited personalities. He has multiple personalities, but he doesn't suffer from multiple personality disorder. He is actually one person. Unlimited forms of the Lord, but they are all one, in that they are aspects of the personality of the Supreme Personality. That actually applies to every living entity. Also, we are all part and parcel of Krishna. Every single living entity is a little sample of Krishna. And Krishna is not divided in any way. One person manifesting himself in unlimited forms. But as it is explained here, Krishna is the ultimate form of the Lord, the original form of the Lord. Of course, in one sense, these words are very difficult to, these words are only directing us to an understanding, because to say original means there was a beginning, but there is no beginning to the Lord's existence. And it's not that after some time he developed this aspect of his personality that became another person, or that aspect. We have to talk about these things in the language that we have. But actually Krishna is ad hoc. A very nice explanation of this in Srila Prabhupada's lectures on the teachings of Queen Kunti, where he talks about how in this material world, on the one hand, there is the curtain of Maya, which separates us from reality. He gives such a simple example. He's saying, here we are seeing the deity, and then the pujari will come and pull the curtain, and we don't see the deity anymore. He said, so Maya, Krishna has created this Maya. It is such a vast curtain which covers our vision of the Lord. And therefore the Lord is ad hoc saja, because within the curtain, within the realm of Maya, we have material senses only. We can only see material things. We can't see the form of the Lord. And he says those two things are there, and on the other side, we are all fools and rascals. We are all fools and rascals. But the point I'm drawing here is that he explains in very great detail what ad hoc saja means. And he says how, like he gives first of all the English alphabet. He says all the words in the English language are made up of combinations of 26 letters. And those words are used then to frame conceptions of reality, of what is meaning of things. But the description of these things is all within the realm of sense perception. And then he goes to the Sanskrit language, and he says beginning with A and ending with Sha. And he said the same principle is there. All descriptions of things are within the combination of all of the letters that bring about all of the words in the Sanskrit language. But they are all descriptions of what we can see and taste and hear and smell and touch with our material senses. But Krishna is ad hoc saja. Ad hoc saja. Very interesting that in his treatise at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, when he begins to speak to the sages at Naimisharanya, Sutta Goswami uses this name of the Lord in his first statement. Savai pung samparo damo yuto bhakti ad hoc saja. One must learn what is the purpose of life. As I said at the beginning, the purpose of the human form of life is to re-establish and reawaken one's lost loving relationship with the Lord and act within that relationship, even within this lifetime, through the practice of bhakti in 3 phases: Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. But unless one hears about what is ad hoc saja, what is beyond the realm of sense perception, by one who is authorized to speak on the subject, then one will never know. One will never know. In the second canto, there's a very nice purport in the I think the 9th chapter. No, I can't remember the verse. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the way we acquire knowledge, the way we acquire knowledge in material matters. And he says there must be intelligence and there must be research aptitude. Now, of course, we all have different kinds of intelligence and we all have different abilities of research. And so it applies to every field of acquiring knowledge. But specifically, Prabhupada is talking about philosophical knowledge. Philosophical knowledge is that knowledge of the absolute, ultimately. What is the truth of everything? What is the cause of all causes? And one's intelligence, one's material intelligence and one's material research aptitude. And now we see in this so-called scientific age that we live in, all of the instrumentation which is available to us to extend the realm of our perceptions into bigger and bigger space and smaller space, only leads us into more and more and more apparent knowledge of matter. Whereas in the matter of cultivating spiritual knowledge, Prabhupada says everything is more or less dependent upon the mercy of the spiritual master. And then he's very quick to say, to discount the example of Ramakrishna and who was he? Vivekananda. He says that mercy is not transferred from spiritual master to disciple like some electric current, where it was Ramakrishna. He said he touched Vivekananda and gave him all his Shakti, all his knowledge, and transferred it all to him. Prabhupada says it is not like that. And he goes into a very clear description of how the spiritual master presents the subject matter before the disciple with all reason and argument. And then it is up to the disciple to take it up. It is up to the disciple to take it up. But the essential process by which this knowledge is transferred is by hearing. Srila Prabhupada, I was just listening again the other night to these lectures on Queen Kunti. He said, that was my only qualification. That I wanted to hear my spiritual master. He said, I didn't understand what he was saying. In the beginning, he said, such lofty English he was speaking. Actually, practically speaking, to read Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, you need to have the dictionary next to you and a book on grammar to really capture the essence of what he is saying. But when you do, you realize what he is saying is very, very precise and clear. The Transcendental Autocrat is forever inviting the fallen conditioned souls to associate with him in eternal serving mood. Beautiful. So the only purpose for the human form of life, savaye pung sam, parodharmo. Actually, parodharmo means the supreme occupation, but actually it is the only occupation for the human being. Everything else is a useless waste of time. Even religious practice. Dhamma svanushtita pungsam vishvaksena katasuyaha nodpedayet yatiratim shrama eva kevalam. Even your religion, the practice of your religion, if it is not reawakening your lost, your dormant love for God, it is shrama. It is said to be a useless waste of time. So, Bhagavatam is very precise on this matter. And indeed, this purport begins with one very telling sentence in this regard, where Srila Prabhupada says, when Prahlad Maharaj was asked by his father to say something from whatever he had learned, he considered that what he had learned from his spiritual master was the best of all teachings, whereas what he had learned about diplomacy from his material teachers, Sunda and Amaka, was useless. But of course, if one is not exposed to hearing transcendental sound vibration, then this intelligence and research aptitude will never give you a breakthrough into it. You won't find the absolute truth at the end of a telescope or the end of a microscope. You won't find him by developing some listening device to hear frequencies of sound beyond your ability to hear, above and below your ability to hear. There's no way one can go beyond the realm of sense perception unless that which is beyond the realm of sense perception comes into your perception. Comes into your perception. And this is the causeless mercy of the Lord. It is by the causeless mercy of the Lord. The Lord wants us to come back to Him. There's the beautiful story in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where when Gokuma finally arrives back in Vraja and is reunited with the Lord puts his arm around Gop's shoulder and he points and he says, "You don't know how many times I've looked down that path and wondered when you will come." He's wondering that about every one of us. But he's not passive about this. He comes into the material world and he manifests his pastimes. And he manifests his teachings. But then again you think, well, how often does he do that? Once in a day of Brahma. Once every 8,600,000,000 years. So then you may think, well, then what is the hope? I mean, we don't even have 5,000 years of recorded history in the Western world. What is the hope? The only hope is the process of Sravanam. The only hope is the mercy of the pure devotees of the Lord. Because the only way knowledge of the Lord remains extant in human society is if it is broadcast by the devotees. And that is a situation which is fraught with great difficulty also, as Krishna makes it very clear. At the beginning I instructed this knowledge to the sun god, he instructed it to his son Manu, and Manu instructed it to Ichwaku, but in due course of time, the parampara has broken. The onslaught, Prabhupada says, the relentless onslaught of the material energy is there to cover everything spiritual. It is there in the first place to cover us. What is us? Us is spirit. Sat Chit Ananda means spirit. Maya, her only business is to, well, she has two businesses, but her first business is to cover us, then throw us. Just this morning at Soho, Jayadvaita Swami was talking about how Srila Prabhupada used to say in the early days of our movement how my disciples are not afraid enough of Maya. And we need to be very afraid of Maya. because she doesn't care who you are or who you think you are. She'll cover you over, and then she'll throw you. And she has the ability to throw you anywhere in this material world. And she has the ability to cover over anyone in this material world. No one is immune. No one is immune to the influence of Maya. So unless the Lord intervenes in the world, Devi Yesha Gunamai Mama Maya Durakyaya, the door of the labyrinth opens, you walk in, at the door Maya is there to greet you, very welcoming. You make the arrangement, yes, you can take me anywhere, just give me pleasure. And then the door closes. You know how they've got these modern day science fiction things where the wall's there and all of a sudden there's a fizz and a panel opens up. It's like, what? The wall is just, there's no sign that there's a door there. And once that door closes, you're in Maya. And you turn around, where'd the door go? There's no door. And then there's just tantalization of the senses. The initial desire to enjoy the material world in contact with the mode of passion gives rise to lust, which gives rise to infinite desires. Unending desires to enjoy the material world. And this is all predicated upon forgetfulness of Krishna. Forgetfulness of Krishna means forgetfulness of yourself also. Because not because as the impersonalist thinks, I am Krishna. The only real problem is I've forgotten I'm God. That is not what is meant by saying, when you forget Krishna, you forget yourself. Because our very self, the very essence of our existence, is our relationship with Krishna. We all exist in relationships. We all identify who we are on the basis of our relationships. And all of those relationships within the realm of the forgetfulness of our original relationship are all based upon the misidentification of the self as the body. And this has been going on since, as Prabhupada uses that phrase, time immemorial. Now, time immemorial for us is about 30 seconds. He's not talking about that. He's talking about countless creations of the material world which have existed for billions and trillions of years and then been wound up. Prabhupada used the word billion a lot. And if you were around in the 70s, you could understand why, because things had moved on. I remember in the 50s and 60s, it was like somebody was a millionaire, and that was, wow, that's really something. But by the 70s, we were starting to talk about billionaires. And so the concept of billion was there, and Prabhupada used that word a lot. But now, you know, the national debt of the United States is measured in terms of trillions. And the way Prabhupada used that word was to give us an indication of the vast amount of time that we'd been in the material world. And he was talking in one lecture about the miseries of material existence coming one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And he said that this has been going on since the beginning of creation. But then he said, what to speak of this creation? We have been in the material world for billions of creations. But now you know that you can easily see how that means trillions, quadrillions. I don't know where you go after that. What's the fifth, sixth, seventh factor of this? Squillions. And you end up with zillions. You can't go any further. You're at the end of the alphabet. But we're describing a situation which is inconceivably long and which we have been entangled in all of that time. It's a very long time since we forgot Krishna. It's a very long time since we've been entangled with Maya. And at the core of it all is desire. Prabhupada describes the long-cherished desire to enjoy, to control and enjoy the material energy. This is the disease of the living entity. It is the contamination of the consciousness. And there's no way out. There's no way out. And actually when one comes to the point where he wants to kick it off and see what else there's got to be more, you've got to show me something else, it actually leads to some further entanglement in something material. The relentless onslaught of the material energy, the ability of Maya to cover and bewilder and cast us into any situation she likes, is inconceivable. So Krishna intervenes in this, but then he goes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu intervenes in this, but then he goes. And all that is left then is the process by which this knowledge is transferred from one living entity to another by the mercy of pure devotees of the Lord. By the causeless mercy of the pure devotees of the Lord. Nigama kaupa taro galitam phalam sukha mukha amrita drava samyutam. Even the words make your saliva flow. They're so juicy. Nigama kaupa taro galitam phalam sukha mukha amrita drava samyutam. This is nectar. This is the nectar of the transcendental sound vibration of the name, fame, form, personality, attributes, paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord, and it is made all the more relishable. Why? Sukha, amrita, drava, sukha, amritam, drava. I can't pick the word. Nigama kalpa taro galatam, sukha mukha, amrita, drava. Sukha, it has been touched by the lips of Sukadeva Goswami. And so this amritam is drava samyut. It is so much more relishable. It is amrita, amrita. It is deathless nectar. It leads us to deathlessness. It gives us a reminder of our deathlessness. It reawakens us to deathlessness. But deathlessness, real deathlessness, is not just amrita. It is not just the absence of death. It is the presence of ecstasy. Ecstatic emotion. Ecstatic feelings. We do this many times, don't we? We talk about what do you want in life? What does everybody want? What do you want, Prabhu? What do you want out of life?
I want Krishna.
Why?
I'm suffering from material world.
You want Krishna because you're suffering from material life?
Because Jivana Swarupa Krishna.
So then if you acquire Krishna, what will you, what? What then?
Practice Krishna consciousness.
Why?
Go to back to home, back to God.
Why?
I'm happy. Be happy.
To be happy. Happiness is the goal. Everyone wants to be happy. So then the next question is, how long do you want to be happy? And how much happiness do you want? Happiness must be eternal and ever increasing. It must be. Because that's what I want. That's what everybody wants. Nobody wants this suffering condition. And it is so simple. Devi Yesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya Mame Vaye Prapadyante Mayamitam Tarantite. Again, it's there in the words, isn't it? Devi Yesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya. This is heavy. The heaviness, the Duratyaya. That. Actually, that syllable, you can see it's come all the way through to English. You have duration, duress, durable. And it's to do with having to undergo something, having to tolerate something. And even further, you can't get beyond it. You're entangled, you're lost. But then mama vaye prapadyante mayamitang tarantite. You dance out of it. This process of surrender is so simple. It is so simple. And Krishna is so simple in this regard. Prabhupada says, you never come to the temple and see Krishna is angry with you. Where have you been? How can you do this to me? You never come and see me. Why? No. Immediately you turn to Krishna. He's the same Krishna he has always been. He's joyful. And he's very happy to see you. And he wants you to come. So we see in the lamentation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Haridas Thakur. Oh, Haridas, how are we going to save all these people? How are we going to save all these people? And what is Haridas's reaction? Don't you worry, my Lord. I will go. I will do it. I will do it. And what does he do? He goes and he knocks on everybody's door and asks them to chant the holy name of the Lord. Give them a chance, Prabhupada says. These temples, he says, they are here to give everybody a chance to hear about Krishna. Shushrusho Shradadana Shah Vasudeva Kataruchi. Great service is done by this. This hearing about the transcendental name, hearing the transcendental name, hearing about the transcendental name, hearing about the transcendental form of the Lord is inconceivably powerful. Inconceivably powerful. And it is all based upon hearing. If you don't hear, you will never know. And Prabhupada says, reading is also hearing. It is a form of hearing. But unless one is exposed to this transcendental sound vibration, one's situation is hopeless in the material world. But as this verse says, actually the translation in the original is it describes about how these literatures which describe the name, fame, form, qualities, pastimes of the Lord are a different creation, meant to bring about a revolution in the lives of this world's misdirected civilization, in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. And how have those lives become impious? And how has the civilization become misdirected? By prajalpa, by nonsense talk. Srila Bhaktivinoda says nonsense talk leads to nonsense thoughts, which lead to nonsense deeds, which leads to birth, death, disease, and old age. The entanglement in the material world is all based upon hearing the wrong thing from the wrong people in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that means, as the beginning of this purport says, all material knowledge is all useless. It is all useless because it is all simply causing one to hear more and more and more about material things. And that leads us, actually, that segues us very naturally into chanting and remembering. What you hear about is what you talk about. What you hear about and talk about is what you think about. What you will remember. And what you will then begin to value. And then you will become an advocate of glorifying that. In the treatise by Sutta Goswami, in the second chapter of the Bhagavatam, this divinity and divine service, these verses spoken by Sutta are the most complete philosophical synopsis of the absolute truth that you find anywhere. Actually, the whole Bhagavatam and the purpose of the Bhagavatam is encapsulated in those verses. And he explains that the purpose of all of this Varnashram activity, all of this work and so on that we do in the material world, is actually to please the Lord. And then he says, therefore, one should hear about, remember, glorify and worship the Supreme Lord without interruption. Glorify the Supreme Lord, who is the protector of the devotees. You've got to put it on the line if you want to be a devotee of the Lord. Because you have to give up all other shelter. And we're all seeking shelter in something in the material world. And in whatever we take shelter in, we give it a value. And therefore, in the purport of that verse, Srila Prabhupada says these four processes of hearing about, remembering, glorifying, and worshipping are essential for life. We cannot live without engaging in these activities. So what we are exposed to in the first instance, therefore, is very, very important. What we hear is very, very, very important in shaping our consciousness, in shaping what we think about, what we remember, what we give value to, and what we glorify. And there's the saying that if you don't hear about God and develop faith in God and worship God, then what you can hear about and develop faith in and worship is unlimited. The unlimited variegatedness of the material world gives rise to subject matters which are unlimited. And if you get involved in it, really seriously get involved in it, there is no limit to it. It just goes on and on and on. Prabhupada was explaining that about how they came up with the idea of the smallest entity was the atom. And then somebody found, well, no. There's electrons, there's neutrons, there's protons, and somebody's going smaller and smaller and smaller and finding smaller and smaller subatomic particles. And they thought the cell was the smallest entity within the body. But now they can look inside the cell, and each cell is more complex than a universe, practically. Inconceivably complex. And Prabhupada says, and they will go smaller and smaller and smaller and find smaller and smaller and smaller entities. But they will never reach the supersoul. They will never reach the supersoul. They will never discover supersoul. Because Krishna is adhoksaja. Savai pulsam parodamo yuto bhakti adhoksaja. And that bhakti, that is the supreme dharma. That is the dharma of the human being. Everything else is a waste of time. And that dharma, that bhakti, it is predicated upon, it is based upon, and it is developed through hearing. It is essential. It is essential. I love the way that verse goes then. The supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which one can attain to pure, loving, devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. Then, ahoitaki apratihata ya yatma, ya atma. Whose atma? Your atma. Suprasidati. The logical conclusion you would draw from such a statement that the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which one can attain to pure, loving, devotional service under the Transcendental Lord. Who is pleased by that? Well, yes, he is. But the real issue is you are completely satisfied by this activity. That which we are hankering for, and that which we have been searching for throughout countless creations, throughout countless incarnations, through countless lifetimes in the human form, is this bhakti. And it's not that, well, when it's completely unmotivated and uninterrupted, Krishna will be very pleased with you. Yes, of course he will. But that's not the dividend that Sutta talks about. You will be satisfied. Completely satisfied. You will be. And it is so axiomatic. Such devotional service must become uninterrupted and unmotivated in order to completely satisfy the self. Because that is our eternal position. That is our constitutional position. To be in love with Krishna. To be lost in love with Krishna. When Shivaram Maharaj was here talking about his book, you remember? He was talking about how there were some Vaishnavas came to visit Nanda Maharaj in Braj. And they stayed for the night, and they were having their meal. And then after the meal, there was, the social intercourse was going on. And all of these people were talking about was this little boy Krishna. And the Vaishnavas, they were thinking, what is this? These people, what are they so fixated on this little boy for? They weren't such elevated Vaishnavas. They hadn't been ushered into this Param Dharma. Even Vaishnavas can remain outside of the essence of Param Dharma. So we have to reflect on this and understand, not only does Krishna appear once in a day of Brahma, Lord Chaitanya only appears once in a day of Brahma. So what are the odds of you being in the human form of life on the earth planet in the Kali Yuga, in that time, immediately after that Dwapara Yuga, once in a day of Brahma, where the Lord has appeared, and immediately after that in the Kali Yuga, when Lord Chaitanya has appeared, what to speak of, as I was saying, they vanished. Lord Krishna is here for 125 years. Lord Chaitanya is here for 48 years. But then, the pure devotee of the Lord has appeared. And he has taken this simple message and given it to his disciples, who have taken this simple message all over the world, who are now being assisted by their disciples to taking it further and further and further, all over the world, to where? Every town and village. We have to take this message to every town and village. Now, hear this. You've heard about so many other things. You're hearing about so many other things. But you can seriously ask somebody, are you satisfied by what you're hearing about? Are you satisfied? And anybody who's honest will say, well, actually, no, I'm not. Because, again, Amrita, we are not getting that deathless nectar for which we are always anxious. We turn our back on Krishna and then we spend an eternity looking for him, but not knowing what we're looking for. And therefore frustrated by Maya over and over and over and over again, until somehow, and it is only by the causeless mercy of the Lord, that somehow is by the causeless intervention of the Lord and his devotee, or the devotees of his devotees, in our lives. And it is all based upon hearing. Hear about Krishna. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Dayananda. Looking at Fulton.
Are all material desires, do they all lead to misery?
Yes. Birth, death, disease, and old age. Prabhupada says you have to understand what is your problem. This is your problem. You're entangled in the repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age. These are dukkha doshanu darshanam. These are the fundamental miseries of material life. So anything that goes on in between is just part of the program. Part of the program. We are entangled in misery. Dukkha layam ashashvatam. It is a temporary place full of misery. And the only reason we're here is because we want to be. Therefore, Krishna says, one must abandon. What a word. Abandon. What a word. What does it mean to abandon something? I mean, in Australia, you go out into the outback and you find a lot of abandoned houses where early settlers headed off. They thought they had this whole thing that there was some kind of inland freshwater sea and there was some kind of paradise in the centre of Australia, whereas it's just one huge desert. And the further you go into it, the worse it gets. So people went out and they built homesteads, and they tried to farm in the English way. But then ultimately they abandoned it. And what do you find? You find it is just, you leave it, you turn around, you walk away from it, and you don't look back. Abandon it. Give it up. And Krishna says one must abandon on all sides, all material desires. Abandon them. Give them up, knowing that, well, this will only bring me suffering. This is not what I actually want. But as Lord Chaitanya says, I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for this holy name. So we are in a very fallen condition, and the situation is a very great emergency. But the process is inconceivably powerful. One simply has to take to the process and stick with it. And then gradually, by hearing from authoritative sources, one's conception of things will change. And the long-cherished desire will gradually and proportionately, the long-cherished desire to control the material world will gradually and proportionately leave you. And you will come to taste spiritual happiness. Any other questions? Or comments? Does anybody want to make a comment? Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Bhagavat Asraya Prabhu
Ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.